At this very moment, while you are watching this video, someone is carrying a weight they have never once mentioned to you. They carried it through their morning, through every conversation that seemed perfectly normal, and they are carrying it right now, in the quiet that arrives after everything else goes still. And that someone is your soulmate. Don't click away, because what I'm about to describe is going to feel less like a video and more like a letter that was somehow written about your life. Sometime recently, maybe this week, maybe last night, your soulmate sat alone with a question they were too afraid to finish thinking. Not because the answer doesn't exist, but because the answer involves you. They almost told you once, think back, a pause that lasted one beat too long, a sentence that changed direction halfway through, one look you caught and couldn't translate. That was the moment, the door opening and closing before either of you could name it. But here's the truth. Most people live their entire lives on the surface of the people they love. They see the schedule, the smile, the small talk. They never see the war underneath. In the next 20 minutes, you will. Start with the part of them you were never supposed to see. Carl Jung taught that every human being wears something he called the persona, a mask, not quite a lie so much as an act, the carefully constructed self we present so that the world will accept us, hire us, choose us, love us. Your soulmate has a persona too, and it is a good one. It works on their co-workers, and it works on their friends. It has fooled almost everyone they have ever met, but it does not work on you. On some level, they have known that from the beginning. Something about your presence reaches past the performance, and a deep, wordless part of them registered it early, like an alarm going off in a locked room, because a mask only survives when nobody looks behind it. You have been looking behind it, without even trying, since the day you met. Now understand what that costs them. There are two versions of your soulmate walking around today. The composed one the world receives, and the unrehearsed one that only surfaces around you. Keeping those two selves separated is exhausting in a way they have no language for, a full-time job they never applied for. So when you sense the heaviness moving through them, understand what their big problem is at its root. It is not their career, and it is not their timing. It is not whatever explanation they offered the last time they went quiet. Their problem is that the mask they have survived behind for years is failing, and it is failing in one specific place, around you. That is the part no one prepares you for. The person your soulmate shows the world is not the person who thinks about you at 2 in the morning, and the space between those two people is exactly where their crisis lives. Jung once wrote that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Read that sentence again. Both are transformed, not entertained, not comforted, not completed the way the movies promised. Transformed. When your soulmate met you, a reaction began that neither of you consented to, and neither of you knows how to stop. On the surface, it looked like attraction, like ease, like finally. Underneath, something far more serious was taking place. Their unconscious recognized in you the exact elements it had spent a lifetime avoiding, and the exact elements it needed in order to change. This is why the connection has never felt casual, even when you both worked so hard to act casual. This is why a short conversation with you outweighs entire days of talking to other people. The conscious mind chooses company. The unconscious mind chooses catalysts. And you were never just company. You were the catalyst. But every catalyst carries a cost. And the cost is this. Once the reaction begins, the old self starts to dissolve. That is what is happening inside your soulmate right now. Not boredom, not indifference, dissolution, the slow and disorienting collapse of the person they used to be able to pretend to be. Beneath all of that composure sits Jung's most famous discovery. He called it the shadow, everything a person has been forced to bury alive in order to stay acceptable. The anger they were punished for showing, the need they were shamed for having, the softness they learned to hide because someone treated it like a weakness, and the dreams they folded up and put away because wanting them out loud felt dangerous. The shadow does not die when it is buried. It waits, it gathers, and it holds its breath for one thing only: a person safe enough to surface around. That is what you are. That is what you have always been to them, whether either of you had words for it or not. Around strangers, their shadow sleeps. Around you, it stirs. Old grief they were certain was finished. Old shame they assumed was outgrown, and old fear arriving in brand new disguises. There are nights they rehearse telling you. They build the sentences in the dark, arrange them, polish them. Imagine your face as you hear them. Then daylight comes, the mask goes back on, and the sentences return to the drawer. What they will never say out loud is this: they are not afraid that you will someday discover their broken places. They are afraid that you already have, and that some quiet morning, without warning, you will decide those places are reasons to leave. So look again at their distance. Their big problem is not something happening to them out in the world. It is something rising inside them. Shame that predates you, wounds that predate you, a verdict about their own worth, written years before your name ever entered their life. Your presence, warm and close and far too seeing, is pulling all of it toward the surface at once. And they are standing in the middle of that flood, trying with everything they have to look normal. Now I need to stop and tell you something you may not want to hear. This video is not only about them, it is about you. Notice what your own mind has been doing for the last several minutes. Scanning memories, matching their behavior against my words, building a small case file with their name on it. Be honest with yourself about how automatic that was. That reflex, keeping every bit of your attention pointed outward at their crisis, feels productive, but it is comfortable for one very specific reason. As long as you are busy analyzing them, you never have to look directly at yourself. Jung had a word for the strange experience of watching our own buried material perform on someone else's stage. He called it projection. The traits that disturb us most in someone else are so often the very traits sleeping, unclaimed, inside us. So ask yourself the uncomfortable questions. If their distance terrifies you, where did you first learn that love can vanish without warning? If their silence feels like punishment, who taught you that going quiet means you did something wrong? If your chest tightens when a message sits unanswered, is that about this person, or about every person who ever left without explaining why? Those are not the same thing, even though they wear the same face. A soulmate bond is a mirror facing a mirror. Their problem involves you because their psyche is tangled with yours, and your reaction involves them because your oldest wounds are wide awake in this connection too. Two people, one shared pattern, staring at each other across a silence neither of them created alone. Most people never see this. They spend the entire relationship decoding the other person and die strangers to themselves. You are not going to make that mistake. Not after today. Deeper than the mirror, something older is waiting. Freud discovered it and gave it an unsettling name: transference. We do not meet the person standing in front of us cleanly. We meet them through a crowd of ghosts. Every caregiver who came and went. every early love that ended badly, and every moment when intimacy turned, without warning, into pain. All of it stored, none of it gone, all of it quietly voting on how safe it is to be loved today. So when your soulmate hesitates, understand who they are actually hesitating with. It is not you. It is the ghost of the first person who made love feel dangerous. When they pull away right after a moment of real closeness, they are not rejecting you. They are obeying an instruction carved into their nervous system decades ago. Closeness is where the hurt comes from, so step back before it finds you again. They have typed out the whole truth to you, at least once. Every word of it. Then they watched their own thumb press delete, told themselves it wasn't the right time, and grieved a little, because it is never the right time when a ghost is in the room. You are not competing with another person. You are competing with a memory. Sit with that for a moment, because it changes everything about how you read their behavior. And here is the part almost nobody understands. Transference is not only how wounds repeat, it is how wounds heal. The old pain resurfaces around you for one reason only. Some part of them, deeper than the fear, believes you might be the one who finally ends the pattern instead of repeating it. Their unconscious is not running from you. It is auditioning you for the most important role anyone has ever been offered in their life. The one who stays differently. The reply that took hours, and the plans that suddenly went vague. The eyes that hold yours 1 second too long and then look away. And the warmth that arrives like a wave and retreats like one too. These are the signs you have been trying to read, and they are almost always misread. There is a version of them that exists at 3 in the morning, unguarded, aching, certain about you. And there is a daylight version that renegotiates everything the night version felt. You have been in a relationship with both of them and never known it. Your mind wants to file all of this under a single painful word, doubt. But look at what the evidence says. Indifferent people are consistent. Indifference is smooth, calm, effortless, because it has nothing to manage. What you are watching is not the absence of feeling. It is the containment of it. A person holding something enormous with both hands, terrified of dropping it in front of the one it concerns. Silence is not empty. Silence is effort. Distance is not always a departure. Sometimes it is a person stepping back from a fire they do not yet trust themselves to hold. But here's the truth, and this is where it turns dangerous. If you mistake containment for rejection, you will start defending yourself. You will pull back, go colder, match their distance with some of your own, one careful inch at a time. And to their unconscious, already braced for abandonment, your self-protection will not look like hurt. It will look like proof. Proof that opening up was a mistake. Proof that the pattern always wins. This is how two people who chose each other lose each other. Not through betrayal and not through fading love. Through two defense systems firing at shadows in the dark. Each one certain the other shot first. Which brings us to the invisible test. Right now, whether they planned it or not, your soulmate's unconscious is running an experiment. And the laboratory is this connection. It creates small distances, then watches what you do inside them. Not to torment you, but to answer the only question a wounded psyche ever asks, is this person safe, or is this person like the others? And here is the cruel geometry of that test. You cannot pass it by force. Chase them, and you confirm their fear of being consumed, panic, and you confirm their fear that everything good is unstable. Demand answers before they have language for what is happening inside them, and you confirm the oldest suspicion of all, that love is an interrogation with a verdict at the end. Feel the trap in that. The more desperately you grip, the more surely it slips. Your fear of losing them, left unexamined, becomes the engine of the very loss it is trying to prevent. Jung taught that real growth happens only inside what he called the tension of opposites, holding two truths at once without collapsing into either one. And that is exactly what this moment demands of you. Care without control, presence without pressure, love without a leash, time without a countdown running behind your eyes. Almost no one can do it. That is precisely why it works. Here it is then, the center, the thing this entire video has been circling since the very first sentence. The big problem your soulmate is facing is not a decision about whether they want you. Wanting you was never the question. Wanting you is the only part that has never been in doubt. The problem is a confrontation with who they must become in order to keep you. To stay, the mask has to die. To love you in daylight, they have to walk through every buried room your presence has unlocked and let themselves be seen, fully, with nothing left to manage. That is the most frightening demand a psyche can receive. Jung called this process individuation, the long, sacred, terrifying work of becoming whole instead of becoming acceptable. Most people postpone that work for an entire lifetime. They choose the mask, and they call it peace. Your soulmate no longer has that option because of you. Let that land, not with guilt, but with awe. You are not a bystander to their crisis. You are the reason it finally arrived. Not because you did something wrong, but because you are the first real thing their defenses were never designed to survive. What do you do with all of this? You do the one thing their fear has never encountered. You become the exception. Where their history was chaos, you are consistency. Where their past punished honesty, you make truth safe to say out loud. And where every old love demanded the mask, you make it unnecessary. This is not passivity, and it is not waiting on the sidelines with your heart in your hands. This is the most active thing a human being can do, holding a steady frequency while someone else's storm moves through the room, present without hovering, warm without grasping, honest about your own feelings without turning them into an ultimatum. And hear this clearly, because steadiness is not servitude. You are allowed to have limits, and you are allowed to protect your peace. A lighthouse does not chase ships, and it does not switch itself off either. It stands, it shines, and it lets the storm decide. And while they fight their battle, you tend to yours. When the fear rises in you, and it will, sit with it instead of transmitting it. Ask it where it comes from. Stop letting a wound from your past write messages to your present. Your steadiness has to be real, because a nervous system can always tell the difference between patience and performance. Because the strongest thing you will ever offer your soulmate is not advice, and it is not pressure. It is proof. Living, breathing, day after day proof that love and safety can exist in the same body at the same time. One final layer remains, and it ties everything together. Jung left behind a warning that explains every uncanny thing you have felt in this connection. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about everything that has seemed fated here. The pull you could never name. The timing that made no sense on paper. The way this person appeared, exactly when some buried part of you was ready to be found. The certainty, beyond all logic, that this particular soul matters. That was the unconscious, directing both of you toward the same threshold from opposite sides of it. But something just changed, and you felt it change. You made it conscious. You now see the mask, the shadow, the mirror, the ghost, the test, which means, as of today, you are no longer a passenger in this story, and soon, neither will they be. This is the moment most people close the video and drift back to distraction, letting everything they just understood dissolve into noise. Don't. Stay here a few seconds longer and let it settle, because sometime soon, tonight, tomorrow, this week, you will feel it again. The distance, the silence, that strange, unreadable weather moving between you. And this time you will not panic, because you will know what you are looking at. Not a door closing, a mask cracking. Not the end of your story, but the beginning of the only honest chapter it was ever going to have. Your soulmate is facing the biggest problem of their inner life, and it involves you. Not as the cause of their storm, as the first person who ever made them believe the storm could end. A bond like this was never sent to keep you comfortable. It was sent to make you both real,